Do you ever wonder why we don't speak for the Irish diaspora all around the world? Well, Daithí agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan, Irish Pagan School, and I'm here to talk about that topic there today. And, well, ní answer, not hard to say, it's not our place. It's not our place to speak for an experience that I or my direct ancestors never experienced. And I think that's what can be very frustrating about it from time to time. Because there are many people who are descended from Irish people who were forcibly kind of removed from the island or had to kind of like make tough choices for them to survive or for their family to survive. And it would be very disingenuous for me to sit here as someone descended from survivors on the island to try and speak on behalf of people who are descended from those outside the island. But that doesn't mean that there's not a conflict or a crossover where things get very difficult to handle or to manage. Because unfortunately, there are people in the diaspora who try and on many occasions speak for Ireland and speak for the Irish descendants in Ireland. And so this is where like it's easy to say no, we don't speak for them because we're not descended from their experience. But in the same way, they don't have a right to speak for us, but they do get to acknowledge their ancestry. And I think for me, I had the privilege and the honor of traveling into the States once. I was brought over for a conference with my partner Laura, and I really didn't get it. Now I'd been around Irish Americans before coming into Ireland, and I'd been like I traveled in the States previously myself, and I've had people like, "Oh, where are you from?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm from Ireland." And they're like, "Oh, I'm from Ireland too," with the broadest Chicago accents ever, and grinding frustration for me whilst trying to maintain and be polite. Um, their great great grandfather was from Ireland. And so I couldn't get it. I didn't understand. And which was very frustrating how they were identifying as Irish, but they're not of Irish culture. They're not born in Ireland. How can they identify of that? But I acknowledge their Irish descent, and I didn't get where my frustration was coming from until I was at a house party with a friend who was hosting us, which I was delighted to, and they brought over a group of people, and I was sitting beside this older gentleman, and he was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm from Ireland as well. Like my family's from Offaly." And I'm like, great, okay. And of course, he has the biggest like Santa Cruz accent ever, and like had been back to Ireland, and he's like, oh yeah, yeah, I've been back to the family loads of times. I've been back, I've driven around the area, and like great for him to have the privilege and the ability to do that. Um, but I still I was frustrated to be sitting by this person as an Irish person and having them identifying as an Irish person, and I was like, okay, John, sit on your own fucking feelings and try and pay attention and figure this out. And I'm really glad I did because he said something that gave me a revelation, almost an insight or a perspective that allowed me to kind of understand and to empathize to a certain degree with the situation. And so we're sitting there having a chat. He's talking about being from Offaly, even though he's visited but has never was never born in Ireland and grew up in Ireland and barely understands Irish culture. He understands it from how he has experienced the outside of it. But then he said something. He's like, my most treasured possession from Ireland is a photograph I have. And the photograph is of my grandmother as a child dancing with her grandfather. And so it's this black and white photograph, and he goes into like beautiful detail of it and how it's his great great grandfather or whatever, like in a tweed jacket, flat cap, and they're dancing in front of the fire, and like she's in a small girl, like small dress, bows in her hair, and like this is his most prized possession of his Irish ancestry. And he described it in so much detail, I could envision it from what he had described, and his passion for it, his feeling for it, his emotion for it made a lot of sense to me in that moment. But so also did what he was passionate about. He was passionate about an encapsulated image from time, from the past. For him, Ireland was his great great grandfather dancing with his granny, in front of the fire, like, having a jig. That's what Ireland was. That's what his entire perception and his entire reality of what Ireland was to him, which was this fossilized thing set in amber. Um, and it made sense to me then. because it was his granny who like survived the trip over. Then it was that kind of like her struggle, her trials, her like travails really to overcome in order to get out of Ireland, to get over into the States, and then not just to arrive there, but then to make a life there, and then for her descendants to successfully live in that new country. And for me, being descendant of an O'Sullivan, again, there's O'Sullivans all over the fucking world, but I'm descendant of O'Sullivans who stayed in the island. There's an entire section of experience. There's an entire, like, generations worth of history and experience that my ancestors never experienced. And so when I kind of had that moment, I had that realization, and that allowed me to set aside a lot of my frustration because for a lot of them, the emotional investment or connection is to an encapsulated vision of Ireland or a handed down story of a homeland or the experiences or the struggles that their ancestors, their kind of direct grandparent, great great grandparent, or whatever, had to overcome in order to leave the island, miss the island terribly, but then still forge a new life, find a new way forward, and then grow from there. Which is why the need to hold on, the need to like I'm Irish ancestry, I'm Irish descent, is so much important. And then when we couple that with how the Irish were initially treated when they went into the States, all of the signs and all the information that was put up, which was like no blacks, no dogs, no Irish, and so for a lot of time, like, Irish people going into the States were not even treated as citizens, like, and it was a very, very difficult time frame. So that's the backdrop against which anyone of the diaspora in the States, for example, survived. And not just survived, overcame and thrived. Now, again, some of that is because they were able to identify as white and to associate themselves with white privilege, at the expense of colored people, which is a whole different story for another time. But the idea or the perspective that the diaspora is such a broad and varied kind of collection of experiences that us here in Ireland can't speak for and shouldn't speak for. But in the same way, what they have and what they experience is different from where Ireland is. Ireland has grown and heck of a lot of change. It's no longer Elflas and Elwins dancing at a crossroad. It's no longer peach fires and like flat caps. And this, interestingly enough, came home very clearly where there was a movie released recently with Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson called The Banshees of Owen, I think it is. And it's about these two lads. But whereas we know that that's set in the past of Ireland, there are people who believe that that is exactly the current Ireland. You know, off in an island, like playing fiddles and kind of sitting and talking with no technology around. That's not Ireland as it is now. And there are parts of Ireland that are still acknowledge a lot of the rural traditions, and that trad music is still a beautiful kind of thing. And you can, if you're in Ireland, be in a pub and next thing you know you get shushed and the place goes quiet and then someone starts to sing, and that's a beautiful fucking cultural experience. I'll be honest with you folks. um but it's not all of that. And so that's where Ireland didn't stay stuck in a black and white photograph. It didn't say encapsulated in amber. It has grown and it has changed in the same way that people in the diaspora have grown and have changed. So the most important thing is to make allowances, and this is where I've come to it myself, to make allowances for each other's differences, to make allowances for each other's experiences, and to approach it with respect and compassion. And from our side, that can be very frustrating at times when people kind of come and tell me about how I'm not Irish enough, or like how, the true kind of lineage of Irish culture was maintained by those who went out of the island, or Irish paganism or Irish spirituality is maintained by bloodlines not in Ireland anymore. And we come up against a lot of frustration, folks. We really, really do. And most times, 9 times out of 10, we bite the tongue and say, listen, okay, obviously there's an education piece needed here, and we provide it. And the whole school program that we have, everything we do at the Irish Pagan School, is to provide education. It's to provide education and insight, and to provide people a pathway to kind of connect back with the information that they're looking for. in order to explore their ancestry, to explore the beliefs or the structures of their ancestors, and then try and find some way to bridge that with their own experiences as being a member of the diaspora. So, absolutely, it's not my space. It's not for me to speak for anyone in the diaspora, but also it's not the diaspora space to tell me that I'm not Irish enough or to tell me what Irish is and what Irish isn't. And that's where things like stereotypes come in, and that's where things can become very difficult if people aren't willing to kind of sit with their discomfort and kind of accept that they are ignorant of things. Because ignorance isn't a problem. Like, as in, okay, being ignorant of something is not a problem. Choosing to stay ignorant of something is, nowadays, with access to information all around us and available to us. In my perspective, people who choose to not educate themselves, who choose to kind of maintain an ignorance of something, um, that's where there's a problem. If someone says, "Listen, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn," I will give you time a fucking day. I will give you all the time I can to help and to kind of guide. Or if you come and say, "I have a question," I will be delighted because that will give me an opportunity to experience the world through your perspective. I then get an opportunity to grow and expand my own perceptions and to challenge my own biases or beliefs that I may or may not know I have. So, respectful, compassionate discussion is fucking hugely important. But when people fall back on closed minded tropes, when people choose to take offense about something and to hold on to that frustration instead of sitting with discomfort and ask themselves why they're uncomfortable, that's when stuff gets shut down and doesn't progress very far. So, thank you very much for joining me for this chat. I do appreciate it. If you are looking to know more about your ancestry, if you want to connect, we have a lot of information that will help you along your path of interrogating that. And all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/roots. There's a download you can grab there, which will kind of get you on the way to kind of exploring it, to asking the right kind of questions, to directing you towards resources that will help you kind of grow and explore that aspect or that facet of your connection. And that doesn't change who you are. It doesn't have to change who you are. It doesn't have to change, like, the experiences of the more direct or close ancestors to you. In fact, I would recommend that you do explore that specific aspect of history, because it's not for me to fucking tell you about what happened when your ancestor arrived into the land that you're on at the moment, or if you are a member of the diaspora, sorry. Um, but also don't disregard that effort. Don't disregard that history for striving for something further back or further away. We are a culmination of a lot of different experiences from our ancestors. And we are, every single one of us, descended from a survivor. So, Gaurav Mahagat, thanks very much for joining me. Look after yourself, take care, and until the next time, Slán. Goodbye.